of all these lies. Don't care if I capsize. Oh no. Empty hearts and neon lights. They're playing with my mind. Gotta get out of here tonight. Oh, I wanna run off and fly. And I'll tell myself it's fine to be alone. Just to find somewhere that finally feels like home. Oh, oh, oh. I hate all this overthinking. Oh, 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 oh. The more I swim, the more I'm sinking. Take me to a world of silver. No more heartbreaks, tears, painkillers. Take me somewhere unfamiliar. Bring me back to where we started out. Get me out of now. To where we started out. Get me out of now. To where we started out. La 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 la, oh, oh. Get me out of broken hearts and starting fights, turning truth to lies. Gotta get up, stop wasting time. Yeah, I wanna run off and fly. And I'll tell myself it's fine to be alone. Just to find somewhere that finally feels like home. Oh, oh, oh. I hate all this overthinking. Oh, 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 oh. The more I swim, the more I'm sinking. Take me to.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, welcome everybody. Just a quick microphone test. Is it too loud or all good? Great, okay, fantastic. My name is Leila de Kretzer. I'm the Global Breaking News Editor at Reuters. I'm really excited today. We've got this panel. It's about powering trusted news with AI. I've spoken to several of you who hopefully have also turned up for the panel about how many panels are about AI at this conference, and I'm hoping that we can kind of get beyond the headline and talk about what's happening in our newsroom when it comes to AI now and where we want to go in the future. I'm very lucky. Next to me is Harris Aga. He is our Senior Director for New Product. And then next to him is Mahesh Ramachandra. He is the head of newsroom technology. Now, all of the technology in the world could not allow my colleague Jane Barrett to be here live on the screen. She is the global editor for Media News Strategy and she's in London. So I had to tape a quick last-minute emergency video with Jane from my hotel room last night, and she is going to join us via that video. So I'll throw to that video straight away, and we can start there.
Hi Jane, so good to speak to you.
Hi Leila, sorry that we're having to do this as a pre-record, but hey, technology.
Yeah, well I guess that's the first question. Okay, everyone in this room wants to know, are robots coming for our jobs?
I would joke and say I wish, but joking apart, I think that the robots might come for part of our jobs, but hopefully the part of the jobs that we don't want to do. So when I think about AI in the newsroom, I tend to think about it in three different buckets. So I think about replace. Like, what are the jobs that we're currently doing as human beings that I wish we didn't have to do because I just don't think it's a particularly good use of our time, or that a robot could do it better or faster or more efficiently? Then I look at kind of how can we augment our work. So that's really thinking about how can we get machines to do that. It might be like deep document analysis, or it might be reversioning content, things like that, that really help us get more out of the journalism that we're doing and help to augment our journalism. And then the final box is transform. And this is kind of where I think we're only at the very, very foothills of the journey, which is around kind of what are the changes that are going to come down, the way that we interact with our audiences, how we engage our audiences, how we work within the newsroom, how we pull together our news gathering, how we produce things that might be true in 3 to 5 years' time, but we can't even start to glimpse now. So when people say to me, as a robot's going to take my job, it might take the bits of your job that you don't want to do, but hopefully that's then going to free us up to do more value-added journalism, the journalism that we really want to do for our audiences, and the journalism, frankly, that we want to do for the good of the news industry and for the good of society.
So let's get on that, because speaking of the good of society, there have been some monumental screw-ups with AI and mistakes and errors. How do we make sure that we're acting in an ethical way and not contributing to any misinformation out there?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think that's kind of what newsrooms around the world are really grappling with. I speak to lots of Reuters clients every week, and it's one of the things that we're talking about loads, is how do we keep editorial control? And I think that we're still, as I say, in such early days of some of this technology. I mean, Reuters has been doing forms of automation and AI for now a decade and plus, right? Particularly on our financial file, on our sports file, areas where there's quite a lot of data involved. And even then, you know, we kind of have to keep on tuning the models. We have to keep that editorial control. We have to keep the human in the loop, to use the jargon, to make sure that the machines aren't running amok and to make sure that we are still in control. We have a brand that we need to protect, right? You know, we've been around for 172 years. I don't want a machine suddenly losing our reputation for us. So I think it's really important that in any form of journalism that we're doing, whatever your newsroom is doing, that you work out what, just as you know what your editing process is, like what's your news editing process, your reporting, your production, like who has control over each of those bits. We need to have the same thing with AI. We should never give away the keys to the castle, certainly not to a machine. And so I think what we've seen over these last months is that lots of newsrooms have started to come out with their own guidelines and guidance. Reuters has as well. And one of the things that we were talking about when we were setting up our guidance, I don't know, maybe about in April, May this year, was really to think about how does what Reuters stands for translate into a world of AI? And we're controlled, as you know, Leela, but by the trust principles, which are so the set of values that really hold us and give us the guidelines as to what we should be doing every day. And we focus a lot on trust principle number 2, which talks about our independence, our integrity, and our freedom from bias. So that's kind of like sine qua non, has to be there. But then we also look at trust principle number 5 that says that no effort shall be spared to adapt, expand, and develop the news services that we provide. So it's like the 2 pedals of a bicycle, I always say. It's like we've got to keep on adapting, but we've also got to do it with integrity, independence, and freedom from bias. And so some of the things that we've been talking about are, for instance, a human is always going to be responsible for what goes out. And so that accountability is still within the newsroom. The other thing that we've said is that if ever a model gets up to a point where we believe that we can take off the handbrake and it's useful enough and it's accurate enough to be out there without a human on it, we will make that very, very clear. So we will always be transparent with our clients, with our consumers, as to what they're reading, what they're viewing, how something has been produced. So, for example, I'm sure that Harris and Mahesh will talk a little bit about Avista, where it's machine only. And so we tell people that that's the case. We do some automated translations where we say it's been done by a machine. So, you know what you're getting. And we hope that it's more useful to have this news in your own language than it is, with the caveats around machine translation, than it is to have ours. So it's very much, you've got to take step by step, and you've got to keep on going back and checking. keep on checking, keep on checking, keep on. Just because it works one day doesn't mean it's going to work the next day. So we have to keep on developing that and make sure we have that editorial control.
We have people in the room from all the different parts of a news organisation, journalists, product, audience development, sales, and of course technology. Now, we all know in newsrooms that collaboration involves a lot of work. Can you tell us a little bit about how Reuters is working together on AI and how you bring all the different parts together to work on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're really lucky here at Reuters because we've often been working together, so technology and product, sales, business development, editorial. And so what we're doing at the moment is we have a cross-functional team of all of those different bits. And we meet on a weekly basis, looking at the ideas that we have. How could AI help this area or that area? And we come together and we sort of throw around the ideas and then critically actually then put them into production through a sort of proof of concept model, so that we can see then through the proof of concept what works for each group of us, and is it better for editorial than it is for product, or did technology think it was a success but editorial thought it was terrible, so that we're all in the process learning together. And I think that that's really critical at the moment. One of the difficult things right now about AI, particularly with generative AI, is that the interface has become very simple, but actually the concept and the technology is very, very complicated. And so as journalists, we all have to start learning how these LLMs work, rather. We have to educate ourselves, but we also, if we can work with our technology and product colleagues, we can kind of get to a place where we think, yes, that's something that's possible to do for technology, for our clients, editorially, we're happy with it. And some things where we'll have robust discussions, and sometimes we'll say, do you know what, that's just not worth trying. There's an easier way of doing it. We don't need to start doing a proof of concept. So it's about experimenting responsibly, but also experimenting together and really leaning into the collaboration across the different bits.
Thank you very much for bearing with us with a pre-recorded video. I assure you it was far worse for me to see myself up there. So let's talk a little bit about this collaboration that Jane just alluded to. I just want to kind of set the scene for you, everyone in this room. Sometimes it can be really complicated to understand Reuters business, but I like to kind of think of it in two parts. So one, we are one of the biggest providers of financial information, right? So we deliver news to LSEG. It's a lot of news, and we have a high volume financial information business. And then two, we also have a media business, which most of you hopefully are our customers, and you'll either be, you may be everything but text, video, photos. So I wanted to start with Mahesh, just to sort of talk through how we're using AI with our financial customers in the first place. So Mahesh, can you take us through what we're doing at the moment?
Thank you, Leila. So as Jane was saying, we have in Reuters been working with AI for close to almost 2 decades, and then on all along these lines, I can only see that our journalist force have only grown, not reduced. So at least thus far, AI has only enriched, not the other way around. So the areas where we've done AI can be broadly grouped into 2 buckets. This is what we have done so far, is AI for efficiency and automation, and AI for discovery, content discovery. And in the efficiency and automation space, you can think of short form journalism. Think more like very short form alerts or snaps or the very short briefs versus the long stories. So typically, a lot of the financial information or the news that we disseminate for companies, for economic indicators like the Fed announcements, interest rates, etc. They're very short form. So we create a lot of those automations using AI, machine learning and natural language processing for both company news automations as well as for economic indicators, like things like today when Jerome Powell's announcements came out. So we have a sequence of automations that actually run that produce news outputs at the back of that. And the key, there are 2 or 3 key points here. One is this always, as Jane said, the human in the loop, that every alert is always reviewed even though the alerts do go out first because they have to pass a threshold of accuracy of over 99.5%. Even though they do go out, they immediately are reviewed by journalists. So if any errors occur, they are immediately corrected. So the human is always in the loop. This is not a problem that is solved. So we recently just acquired a company. We made a big investment. We acquired a company called PLX in Europe, and that's because the way how companies disseminate earnings information, that changes, and the forms of content releases, they changes all the time. So AI is not done and done with. It is always changing, and we have to continuously.
To give you hope there, the PLX was a group of Reuters journalists who used to work for Reuters, and they created a cool new company where they automated a whole bunch of financial and corporate news, and then they sold it back to Reuters. So there you go. There's definitely hope.
Absolutely. And that's a great marriage of both journalism and technology. In slightly the longer form journalism for LSEG, so we do a lot more machine translation, just as Jane said. But again, these are machine translations of more structured news stories, things like earning stories or economical stories that typically follow a very standard structure. So they are much easier to translate, and when the machines do get things wrong, so we know how to correct those much easily. So, we do more sports and market summaries, like end-of-day summaries and sports stories, things like English Premier League, like typically the a match coverage, etc. So those things can be very easily structured from structured data. So we actually compose them using AI, and we've done that for now close to a decade. So that's just a couple of examples for long-form journalism. In terms of discovery, and this goes back to some of the oldest AI, is all about enriching content. All this content, the greatest content that we produced, if they're not discovered, they don't exist. So how do we enrich this content with all the entities, people, companies, and also classifying with topics such as, is this about politics? Is this about markets? Is this about sports? All this kind of metadata and enrichment. We use a lot of AI for doing that, and that is entirely 100% machine generated. And lastly, you read an article, you're more likely to go and read another article because they're related, and using that. So those recommendations and things, that is also something that we enrich through AI and metadata. So that's all the things that we've done thus far, just as an example of what things we do for LSEG. And we do several things in the video space, which I'd like Harris to talk about.
Harris, over to you.
Yeah, thanks Mahesh, and thanks Leela. I'll start off with, I'm the next step in the assembly line, if you may. So the content is created, it's already enriched by the technology, and now it's ready for distribution and consumption by our media customers across the globe. And I'll start by saying that the most important thing that our media customers look to Reuters, aside from accuracy, is speed, right? And that's where Avista comes in. As Mahesh said, we could have just called it AI enrichment, but we love acronyms. So we decided to go with Avista, which is essentially audio, video, speech, transcription, and augmentation. So what does it do to our videos that we have today? As of this moment, you can go into our flagship platform called Reuters Connect, and it automates subtitles for English ready-to-publish content. We also get time-coded transcriptions in multiple languages. We also get translations of non-English back to English. We also get frame-accurate shot lists and scene detection. And then most importantly, we get entity and public person recognition through this enrichment. It's a software that we've developed in-house by a team of very, very capable innovators, data scientists, and product people. And it's really exciting because, to Mahesh's point, if you can't discover this content, it's of no use to any of us. The Reuters Connect platform at any given time has about 14 million assets. It has the entire Reuters archive library, which dates back to as early as 1896, and it has over 100 partners that also syndicate their content through this platform. So this is just the very first start of what we're doing in terms of enriching our videos and our audios. So it enables all of our customers to discover it faster, and it improves their efficiency. Because unlike a publisher model where you want the customer to be there and read the next article and the next article and the next after that, my goal for my job is for them to find it as quickly as possible, get it into their edit, and get it into their publishing platform, because that's essentially what the Reuters wire service is built out for. That's in a nutshell, but I'd love to talk about the future of what we're doing with this technology. We've rolled it out to videos and photos. We also have a massive photo library, not just from Reuters, but again from our partners, for object identification, for landmark identification, for topic codes. So if you're looking for a story on Narendra Modi on space, that's one curation that you can get as your search results, versus if you're looking for Narendra Modi on Kashmir, those are completely different stories related to the same entity. But how do you discover it, and how do you discover it fast? We need that enrichment, and we need to provide that enrichment to our customers. So that way they can enable it and use it in their platforms, but also in our platforms. So in terms of the technology itself, somebody asked me the question earlier, will it work on any CMS, or will it work on any platform? The answer is yes, right? Because we're enriching the content agnostic of the platform that it's being used on. And that's the beauty of all the AI technologies that we use. In terms of how we have developed it, it's taken us some time because, to Jane's point and what Leela and Mahesh have said earlier, there are two principles that we work with. It has to have a very high threshold of quality. That's a given, and we will not roll something out unless we feel absolutely comfortable. And we're fortunate enough that we work with journalists, both in our internal newsrooms as well as our customers. And our customers are some of the smartest people in the world. They will know immediately, and they will be able to tell us, is the quality good or not? And then the second thing is transparency. Everything that we do, and as you can see, so this is just one example of, there's a video, there's a sidebar of who's in the frame, and you can just skip through. If you want, out of these 5 leaders, you want to just focus on Narendra Modi and when he's speaking, you can just click on that and get to that money shot, so get it in your edit as quickly as possible. The transparency is key. We clearly identify that this is machine generated, and this is something that Reuters' human editorial staff did not have an overview on. But we feel good enough about the quality, and because our customers understand this, they can feel confident enough to use it in their edit or decide not to. And most importantly, that's in my day job, I'm just looking for feedback from our customer base to understand, how do we enrich it? Did it work? Is it good enough? Because if it's not, I'll just remove it.
So I want to give you like a real life example of how this is used. So I'm your like traditional, newspaper trained journalist, started in tax, was a reporter, all the rest of it, and then, exploded with the digital movement like many of you did. I have no concept of editing video or audio, right? Those aren't the skills. I've picked them up along the way, but that's not my natural skill base. I now produce a daily podcast, and one of the ways that I edit is I use this kind of technology. So I can find a clip that someone might have said. So the BRICS Summit, for instance, we were looking for anything that might have been said on Wagner. It's very easy with this automated transcription for us to look and see and find those clips to easily add to our podcast. And that's the kind of change that I think AI can bring to newsrooms that we can all benefit from. So Harris, thank you very much. You've made my job easier.
Big credit to my team. Yeah, it's all about efficiency, right? It doesn't matter whether you're a text journalist, an audio podcast producer, or you're a video journalist. It doesn't matter. The enrichment is across every workflow, and that's what we're trying to bring to the table for all of our customers. And given the fact that our customer base is so diverse, because what works in a newsroom at the New York Times is very different from a newsroom in Tokyo. Their workflows are different, their standards are different, their entire operation of the newsroom is very different. So it's really important that we are able to do this with various technologies. We pick, where we do something in-house, we develop technologies that integrate with other technologies, some of the best in class that are available. We're building something, a database of personalities in the news, because that's most important to our customers today. And with the different translations, again, it plugs in seamlessly into your workflows, which is what our customers value the most.
Typically, one of the things that we had to build this AI in-house is because a lot of the vanilla, the more market-leading face recognition softwares, they all recognize celebrities. They are trained on Hollywood and more media industry, so they're not necessarily trained on
Boring.
Jerome Powell and
Boring political and business journalists.
Yeah, exactly, and or political newsmakers, and this is something that we had to invest in, and it was trained by our journalists, and that's the key. That's the key.
Mahesh, can you talk a little bit about the future state for AI and financial journalism? Just to sort of set the picture here, I think the stat is, and Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, because you might know it too, like we published 30,000 pieces of content a day for our financial clients. So Mahesh was talking about alerts, et cetera. The volume that we're talking about here is huge. So where can you see AI in our financial and business journalism?
Yeah, so I think, as Jane said, again, generative AI is definitely the most exciting area right now. At the same time, we like to joke in technology that we think we've discovered fire. We don't know. So it's either that we figure out how to use it properly, or it can burn us, right? So it's I think the opportunity here is very, very immense. So there are I'll give there are 4 use cases that we're currently considering, or experiments that we are looking to do responsibly. So the first one is, even though we have some of the world's largest journalist workforce and we have employed so many automations, we still don't cover every company on earth. We don't cover every financial information that we can because of scale. So scaling and efficiency is still not a done deal, even though we've done it AI for so many years. So one of the things one area we are looking at is expanding corporate alerts or corporate news for things that don't necessarily follow the typical earnings cycle. Most corporate news items, they are quarterly, they are cyclical, and then you get, but like let's say Southwest is announcing a reorg, or Microsoft is announcing layoffs. They don't typically follow an earnings cycle pattern, so we need to be able to generate news of that very quickly and disseminate it. So that's one area that we are looking generative AI as an example. The second thing, as an example, is anomaly detection. So, if Tractor Supply stock is moving today and it's following an anti-pattern of the rest of the industry, we don't really know what is happening, why it's happening. So again, we typically, the journalists do quite a lot of research, the textual research, or has there been an analyst rating change, or has there been some kind of a news that come out, etc. So these type of things, again, we are using generative AI to do better monitoring and better synthesis of this information, and then again bring it back to the journalists so that they can quickly disseminate this and get a structure out of it and then send it. Again, the human is still in the loop to finally make the judgment, but what we are doing is accelerating the pace at which they can make the derivation. The third use case we are experimenting with is explainers. I think there was a recent article about Argentina taking the Chinese yuan as a reserve currency. Reuters wrote a big article about it, but this is also followed by an explainer. Why is this happening? What's the consequence, and what's in it for Argentina, what's in it for the Chinese yuan, etc. So these are explainers we write, but they are time-consuming. So we are experimenting with automating these explainers for more of these type of stories, for the long-form stories that we write, followed by quick explainers that can be easily, sometimes what you can say, Instagrammed, right? So
snappable.
Snappable, yeah.
And that Argentina wine story really going to go hot on Instagram.
It ought to be. That's right. And lastly, I think it's in the area of search itself, discovery. Now, when we think of generative AI and all that, we generally think of content, creating content. But one of the very useful features of ChatGPT or other generative AI tools is to also understand the meaning of your query. So when you write a long form description and say, go do this, it's able to process what you're asking it to do. So the same thing can be used to make better search of our content using that, what you're able to write across. So a big,
That's the bit that excites me the most, frankly.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So these are 4 big areas, I'd say, that are our key areas of experimentation.
And just to kind of set the scene there, what that allows us to do is if, let's say we're able to have a AI help us with an explainer about wine in Argentina, that helps you, right? Your media customers, you're not necessarily completely nuanced in the day-to-day movements of currency, which at Reuters we talk about a lot. So that explainer can kind of serve one audience. But at the same time, our reporter who last week, she broke 3 scoops on what happened between in the currency decisions that China made. And that is a big deal, right? Like our reporter is freed up to do reporting that can break news. And for us, that's one of the biggest things we really, really see as the hope is the more our reporters can be focused on the new in news gathering, and the less that they're having to do the work that, we on both sides, writing stuff that's already known or monitoring, which is a big part of, if you're a business that relies on something happening, monitoring takes up a lot of our staff's time. Okay, I want to get to questions, but before I do, we're going to do a very quick, what excites you the most about the future of AI? I'm going to start with you, Mahesh. You go first.
Yeah, so I think the opportunities are immense, but I think the biggest opportunities lie, as you said, in discovery and search. Is our biggest opportunity. And then the second thing is, we are still telling stories the way we have told, for close to 100 years. I think so. The modern generative AI gives us ability to tell stories in a much richer way. How the news is presented, not necessarily just in the pure vanilla text form, but we can tell stories in a really multimodal form with a lot better explainers and linked with videos. Like what we have previously, we have news as an asset. Differently, like we have video as an asset, we have text as an asset, but we never had this ability of automatically stitching everything together, text and clips and all of this stuff. So the ability to tell rich stories with actually all of this stuff and helping our journalists to create such rich forms of stories, that excites me the most.
Harris?
My answer changes on this question on a daily basis, frankly. The search and discovery experience and what I can do as a product person on that is immense, right? Getting sentiment analysis and speaker identification and understanding, detecting logos and vehicles and music recognition, the efficiencies that it can create are frankly immense, right? And then as you move towards visual search and voice search and, generative AI, using things like ChatGPT to really build something from before you even get to the desk, right? From your morning, you look at your planning calendar and you know that these are the stories that you're going to be focused on for the next week or 2 weeks, and have a module ready to go, starting from the archive, and you can determine that I just want it, in the last year, I want it in the last 10 years, up to the second, before you even get to your desk, and have a package ready for you. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah,
that's really exciting.
I was thinking about that with Prigozhin jet the other day. So, Yevgeny Prigozhin's jet crashed, a big story for Reuters, as you can imagine. And we were waiting to see what Biden would say. And of course, Biden said what we were hoping he would say, which was, I warned you about this before, right? And it just got me thinking, the ability to very quickly see all of the points in video that Biden had spoken about what might happen to Prigozhin or other people in the Pentagon, because the Americans has actually said it quite a bit. That's quite exciting, and we were able to do that very,
do
very
it quickly.
Yeah,
And, provide it in a timeline or in any other format of a mixture of videos and photos and text, and then as media customers, you do whatever you want with it, but you already have half of your work done before you even get started. That's really the power that I think the technology brings us.
So we're going to give Jane the last word on what she thinks is going to be the most exciting. So if we can play that tape.
I'm so excited by the fact that AI can really help us in newsrooms to keep going. We've been so financially challenged over the last 10, 12 years, and we've seen some newsrooms go out of business, we've seen others have to shrink hugely, and with AI, hopefully what we can do is to empower our journalists, A, to get rid of the stuff that they don't want to do so they can focus on the journalism, and then B, to learn, well, to be able to do new skills without actually having had the experience yet. For example, you, Leela, are editing a podcast, having never done audio editing before because of AI. And so I'm very excited by the potential for AI really to empower newsrooms so that journalists can focus on doing what we do best, which is our journalism.
Okay, so we've got some time for questions. Just a shout out from Jane. She's watching along on the live, and you can send her a question via LinkedIn or Twitter if you need, or hopefully I can answer it. And we've got Kate in the audience and some others here too. So please hit us with your questions. Ooh, here comes one.
Hello. Thank you for this. It's really great to see concrete examples. I didn't realize all of this was already happening. How would you recommend a newsroom that's maybe not quite at the same scale start trying to implement these things?
So, first recommendation, become a Reuters customer. That would be the first one. I think what I've been impressed by, so for instance, we mentioned that example of PLX. So that was a couple of guys who were, it was a totally two guys. It was not a big investment in a lot of capital. And the reason I believe they were successful is that they really cared about what the outcome was in the journalism, right? So these guys had spent their days and lives monitoring companies with their disclosures and understanding what news is needed out of those disclosures for their customers, and then figuring out the minutiae of how that information was structured and all the rest. They're subject matter experts and they understood it very well, and so they were able to kind of work with the robot to figure out what needed to come out. And I think that's got some, that matters to small newsrooms. So whatever you know very well, think about what are the kind of structures that come with that you know very well. And then think about what you can start teaching. Now, in the old days, I think some people at Reuters used to write macros to help them. You can imagine, right? You're writing text, a millisecond counts, everything you can do. So people would come up with ways and cheats and hacks. And I think that's probably the culture. So what is it that you cover? What is it that you know is going to be the same every single time or predictive or can come out? How then can you use a robot to help you get that information out faster so you can be doing something else? Does that make any sense?
Yeah. Yes, it does. Okay.
I mean, if you're on video though, the other thing is use AI tools
Yeah, I'll just say, for any type of product development on this, sorry, I'm
you're the worst, probably. It's
for any kind of product development, right? It's identifying what problem you want to solve first, right? And what is your clear objective? And if you can do that, I think there's so many tools, even internally at Reuters. We get, sometimes we get overwhelmed by everything that is available. And, if I speak to some of my sales colleagues or my technology colleagues, of course we want to do everything. But pick the one problem that's going to solve it's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. I'd start there. And of course, we're happy, a shameless plug, we just acquired a new digital asset management system, and we are enriching our content. We're going to potentially enrich our partners' content, and we'll be happy to speak to your newsroom as well. What is your name, sir? I don't think I caught that earlier.
Evan White. I'm with the Inquirer.
Oh, cool.
Nice. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry that we're looking at you funny. We literally are blinded up here. So.
I'll ask my question, then I'll step back. How's that? So, hi, my name is Mariel Myers. I'm the head of video at CNET. I have a question. You mentioned archives, and that's something we're really challenged with. CNET has been around for 20 plus years. We're one of the few media organizations that has been covering tech for that long, and we have an incredible, especially video archive. that really nobody else has, but it's sitting in tapes. And I imagine while, you guys probably hopefully don't have that same problem, but I'm just asking, like, you have an incredible archive, like how did you guys tackle that? Like, I know, like, obviously you're taking the metadata from now on from the content you're getting, but like, how did you tackle dealing with essentially getting your archive into the system so we can be easily searched?
Yeah.
I can take that. So I can say that it is not a solved problem even for us. But what we have, essentially it's because it's an economics issue. So we have the ability to go back and process all of Winston Churchill's archives and process all of them. But it's a value exercise. Not all of those archives are useful in the same level. So this is an area of study for us, because we did a couple of years ago the predecessor to Avista. What we did was we did go back and tag the 100+ years of archive, and through that we found out that not all the quality is the same, and not all content is created equal. So one of the things that we are looking at right now, as we look back at our history, is what exactly do we process with Avista, right? Do we go back, or should we actually start with 5 years, 10 years, going back before 100 years, rather than try everything at the same time? But it's largely driven by what's the usefulness for customers and the archive. So that's the approach that we are taking, rather than do it all by 100 years. Let Harris add it.
Very little to add there. The digitization is something that we do for ourselves. We can do it for others, but it's really going back to you as the customer for you to identify what archive is the most valuable. Or do you just want to preserve and digitize what's on tape, or do you want to eventually monetize and syndicate through platforms like ours, or your own perhaps at some time? But it's an ongoing process, right? It's that's what we've done. That's what our customers are doing. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's an ongoing process. You define where you want to start, and then kind of start enriching the metadata as you kind of go along, right? And depending on the quality of the archive as well, in terms of what is the resolution of the video once it's digitized, then we'll be able to understand how do we need engine A or engine B, because engine A is not good enough for this resolution, and you need a different, a more powerful engine to recognize the face that's being shown in the video.
It sounds like you shouldn't wait 172 years to digitize your archive.
Yeah. But let's chat after. Absolutely.
Hi, sorry for the need for you to squint. So I'm Dan Pacheco. I'm a professor in journalism education at Syracuse University. And it's really interesting to hear how you, the AP, others are just going full bore into AI. But in education, just generally, and this is, don't shoot the messenger, what's happening is some places are saying, you're not allowed to use AI for anything. There's even vendors. There's one called GPT-0 that will flag content as for its percentage of AI used in the content. So it's sort of like a two-part question. One, I'm curious to know for you, hiring students, say, who are starting today and then they graduate 4 years from now, they're going out into the workforce. Does it concern you that like should they be using AI in their writing and editing or not? And then also knowing that there are these AI detectors. I can imagine like a browser plugin showing up. Maybe there will be a backlash to this kind of content at some point, right? I think that's sort of inevitable. Do you consider, are you worried about that for your content and yours? You're being shown as it's like, oh, Reuters is 80% synthetic or something like that from some plugin. Yeah,
so I think I share all of those concerns. So I just want to set the stage here. Where we have automations, but we are very careful about how we're going to do this, right? So there's a large tension between those two trust principles. One is the ethics and accuracy, and the last is you must innovate for the benefit of your customers. And where we see this tension kind of playing out the most is if we are going to be doing this, and this is something that I think everyone in this room is going to be dealing with. What's the value of the information you're giving your customers? And so, you know, we could see a world where the 300-word explainer is no longer king, because let's be honest, a robot could do it. So how valuable is it really? And in that world, the journalism students who can break news, find news, be there first, I think they're the most valuable. So in some ways, the robot isn't really the point. And that's what I'm hopeful with is, and I'll give you a real life example playing out right now. Our economics team is on the ground at Jackson Hole. These guys are crazy good and they're crazy, crazy smart, but they're also crazy fast, because you have to imagine if we get out a piece of economic news faster than anyone else, that is the biggest thing we can do for our customers. That's numero uno. And until very recently, they would have to, like the fastest fingers in the West, like these guys would do this. The automation now, they are able to check that it's running, but it's there. When it breaks, they lose their minds, because it means then that they're having to do the stuff where they could break news. So this morning we have a scoop on Christine Lagarde's, what she's going to do with the ECB with interest rates. That's massive. That's a huge scoop. But if Balash had to sit there running the, typing out the alerts at the same, he wouldn't have been out reporting. So I guess that's what gives me hope. In fact, like really good hope, because when I was a reporter, journos couldn't write anyway. They were just good reporters. So I'm all right with them not necessarily knowing how to use ChatGPT, or if they do, or if they can ask prompts, that's going to be great. I think the bigger question is, can they get a story, and can they report and bring news into the world? And hopefully we go back to those core principles a bit more as well. Does that answer that question?
Yeah. And the second part thing of the question is, about the detectors, and for us, we've always put transparency as paramount, right? So ever since we've done automations, going back decades, right, our content is clearly labeled. We are always labeling content that this is auto-produced. So the customers don't need any detectors. We tell them that it is auto-produced. Because those customers, like the financial customers, they care about speed and accuracy, and of course they trust the Reuters brand. So where it is auto-produced, it actually carries a piece of metadata saying it's auto-produced. And where it's an auto-translated, it does contain a disclaimer and all the metadata saying that this was translated by a machine. So for us, that trust and that transparency is key and paramount. So yeah. So
I think regurgitation might disappear in the journalism world if everyone has a robot who can do it. What is the value in everyone doing it? And hopefully your students come out stronger journalists because of that.
Yep.
Hi guys, my name is Louise Tierney. I'm the Global Product Manager for Human in the Loop at Bloomberg, and previously I did something similar at Twitter. And I was curious about your mention of subject matter experts, and if you use in-house journalists to do that, or if you do it externally, and if it's in-house, do you struggle with a clash between people who typically like to work as reporters or journalists having to work with machines, and how do you think about or deal with that kind of issue?
Do you guys want to take that first go, and then?
So I'll give the example that Leela talked about with PLX as an example that happens to be both an ex-Reuters and an ex-Bloomberg journalist. So that who works closely with technology to essentially prioritize what is most newsworthy. Everything can be automated. That's not necessarily newsworthy, but it's to put that the same rigor and quality of judgment, even in the automations. It requires a very tight participation and vesting of the journalists to create that product, that automation product. So that is a key example. Then the similar examples is what Leela was talking about with Palash, who spends a lot of time with the technology team in creating these automations for economic news, like the ECB interest rates or their announcements, because unlike the Fed announcements, the ECB announcements can be like a soap opera. So it's it requires a certain level of expertise and to train it, because technologists cannot do that. But are all journalists like that? No. So it requires those that have that interest in making the machine better, which will in turn make their jobs better. So we are always trying to partner with editorial, and it's an evolving process to find the right candidates to then come partner with us to do that. So I would say there's not a single solution, but yeah, partnership is the key.
And we're also very fortunate because some of our key editorial leadership, they also understand what our customers want at the end of the day. So they're able to provide this insight into building and training the algorithm that, to my point, it's not for everybody, but once you understand how the end user will consume it, it changes the magnitude by a lot.
I think it's also about doing a lot of listening. Like we would have project groups on automations, for instance, and you'll have someone from product, someone from technology, someone from the newsroom. And, when Mahesh starts talking about entity extraction, I'm like, oh my God, but I actually have to listen and understand what that means, and, to understand that people and places and things were really important. And it did, and I didn't want to listen, but I eventually was like, oh, you just need a verb for jump. What is all the verbs that you could use for jump, right? So I think that kind of collaborative approach is really important, but it's not always easy. People will argue, there'll be tension back and forth. What I've been really impressed by, though, is the testing. So you'll see this kind of moment where they get to a proof of concept and they realise that people have something that's going, and that's when you see those teams kind of I think, work really well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, do we have any other questions? Okay, well, we're very excited that you came today. If you have other questions, please feel free to come up to us. We've also got this QR code where you can scan and read more. And just going to make a plug for that podcast that keeps coming up in this discussion. So if you haven't already listened, Reuters World News is on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to your podcasts, or on our app. Please have a listen. It's the best 10 minutes you can spend in the morning getting to know your world. All right, thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Because I believe